Donald Trump has won. The Republicans have won the House, the Senate. And the question then remains, was all this talk of civil war just a bunch of clickbait, rage bait, hubbub nonsense from an overexcited population? Maybe. I'm happy to be wrong, especially on this. I'd much prefer to just, kick back, order some chicken wings, some barbecue sauce and ranch. Maybe play a good old game of Magic the Gathering and then go skateboarding. The comforts of American life. But my friends, right now, Democrats are calling for the formation of a shadow cabinet, a parallel governance structure. We're also hearing that Illinois and Colorado are calling for the creation of a coalition to oppose the popular mandate and Donald Trump's administration. Now, of course, I can already hear the naysayers, as they always do. This is just advocacy. The coalition against Trump is they're just pandering to voters. All right. Let me play for you the video where we actually hear the Democrat explaining the creation of a shadow government, which is the precursor to civil war. It's a component required. But first, let's take a time travel test. Let's go back in time to 2018. I love the time travel test as it pertains to the prospect of civil war, because I know full well what it was like back in 2018 when I said, I fear we are on track for a civil war. In 2018, there were several articles that were entertaining that we were in a cold civil war or on track to have one, much that we were in a period of civil strife, which is the precursor to civil war. Now, I talked to many Beltway pundits on the right. And they said, Tim, you're nuts. Just because there's 1,000 far leftists and right-wingers bashing each other in the street, just because of Charlottesville, doesn't mean a civil war is coming. And I said, okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean a civil war is coming, but we are on track for one. It can be diverted. Who knows what happens? They told me I was crazy. I remember one guy who said, Tim, the security state would never allow the far left and the far right street battles to turn into some government-wide thing. Where are we now? If I went back to 2018 and said that these far left street battles would evolve into the worst riots we'd seen in 50 years, where people would firebomb the White House grounds, set fire to St. John's Church, injure hundreds of police officers, that they would force the president into an emergency bunker at a time when the government is locking everybody in their homes, saying you can't go outside due to a pandemic. And then 8 months later, you would have 1,000 plus individuals entering the Capitol grounds with hundreds ripping down barricades, smashing windows, fighting with cops. The Democrats would call this an insurrection, that Donald Trump is trying to overthrow the government itself. There would be 250,000 Trump supporters walking the streets of D.C. in protest. And then the Democrats would convene a panel on insurrection and seek to have Donald Trump impeached, imprisoned. He would then be charged with 91 counts of various felonies. One of those at the federal level being that Donald Trump tried to overthrow an election where he lost. If I told you all of that, and then said, following this, Republicans would mount a counterstrike, winning in 2024 every seat. They would win the House. They would win, or every position, not seat. But they'd win the House majority, they'd win the Senate majority, they'd have the Supreme Court and the executive branch. Donald Trump would then seek to appoint Matt Gaetz, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard. You'd be like, shut up. You wouldn't believe it for a second. Tulsi Gabbard in the Trump administration? And then I said, but wait, it gets better. Then the Democrats would announce they're forming a shadow government to counter the moves made by the popular choice the people have chosen. And several Democrat governors would get together and say, we're forming a coalition to oppose the Trump administration because he's Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini combined. You'd be like, my dude, you need medication. Let me slow down. Think about it for 2 seconds. If I went back to 2018 and said, the mass rioting would expand to the worst riots we've seen in 50 years, 30 plus deaths, we would see the country locked down under a once-in-a-century pandemic restriction. Donald Trump would lose an election in which there's claims of widespread fraud. He'd be impeached twice. Then on January 6th, the counting of the Electoral College, you'd have 250,000 Trump supporters in the streets of D.C., several hundred smashing through barricades, breaking windows and climbing into the Capitol building. Several hundred more walking in as doors were being opened. Politicians flee from the building. Democrats call it an insurrection. They ban Trump from all social media platforms. This turns into 2 years of hearings over insurrection. Trump ends up winning. Nobody would have believed that. Now we're at the point where, following the claims that Donald Trump committed insurrection, he'd be charged with 91 counts. He would be arrested 3 times, accused of rape. After the rape accusations, the felony convictions, he would win a mandate. The Republicans would take all branches, and then the Democrats would call for the formation of a shadow government. You'd be like, dude, you watch too many movies. Okay, well, here's CNN. Democratic lawmaker who is proposing shadow cabinet to counter Trump explains how it could work. Here's the video where he explains it.
If Trump attempts to weaponize the justice system against his political opponents with Matt Gaetz at the helm, we could see incoming Senator Adam Schiff as our shadow attorney general, arguing against replacing our independent prosecutors with Trump loyalists. If Trump seeks to eliminate the Department of Education, Congresswoman Johanna Hayes, a former Teacher of the Year, could step up as shadow education secretary to loudly defend public education in the United States. If Trump orders Marco Rubio to hand Ukraine and much of Eastern Europe to Russian President Vladimir Putin, Congressman Greg Meeks, as Shadow Secretary of State, could be a strong voice in support of maintaining international relationships and protecting democracy at home and abroad. Senator Michael Bennet as Shadow Treasury Secretary and Congresswoman Susan DelBene as Shadow Commerce Secretary could help ensure the middle class and small businesses have a voice in government.
I'm done. I am done with people being effing stupid. They're going to say he's just talking about a voice in government. How do any of these things begin? Seriously, read any historical record of these various civil wars, revolutions, or otherwise. A necessary component for this type of internal conflict is a governance structure of authority that exists outside of the existing government. Donald Trump has won. Here are his current, as of Friday, Senate nominations. Marco Rubio, Matt Gaetz, Hegseth, Noem, Ratcliffe, Gabbard, Zeldin, Stefanik, RFK Jr., Burgum, Doug Collins, and he's got 13 more. They're saying if Trump is to actually implement what he is seeking to do by popular mandate, they will create a parallel structure in opposition. Now, you might say, Tim, those people have no authority. I need to explain something to all of you. To those that don't understand, I assume most of you do, but to those who may find this video and don't understand, your logical structures of governance are a fabrication of your mind. What's stopping you from crossing the street outside of the crosswalk? There is a structure in place of society that says jaywalking's illegal. Well, they changed that, but you could physically just do it. When people choose to adhere to the rules of a system, you have order. People say, I'm not going to break this law because it violates social order and I'll get punished for it. What happens when Antifa de-arrests? Whoa, hold on. De-arresting isn't a thing. You can't de-arrest someone. If the cops arrest you, you get arrested. The left doesn't think so. They will punch a cop in the face and shove them and grab the person and pull them out of the arrest. And they call it a de-arrest. Because your systems only apply if you can enforce them. When the Democrats create a shadow cabinet, you might say these people have no real authority to do anything. What is authority? Explain to me what authority is. Let's talk about the southern border. The federal government told Texas you have no authority to keep us from the border, and Texas said shove off. And there's a dispute over who has true authority. If a shadow cabinet is created and they create a parallel governance structure, that is the first component of revolution or civil war. In the event violence breaks out, they will have a system of governance prepared to manage and maintain an opposition force. ABC News says, Illinois, Colorado governors announced state-level coalition to resist Trump policies. J.B. Pritzker of Illinois and Jared Polis of Colorado will be the co-chairs of a new nonpartisan coalition of the nation's governors committed to protecting the state-level institutions of democracy. Governors Safeguarding Democracy, GSD, will be overseen by governors and supported by a network of senior staff designated by each leader, while being supported by GovAct, an organization championing fundamental freedoms. GovAct is advised by a bipartisan, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now they're creating a coalition name, the GSD. All of these things are components of revolution. Now, of course, it doesn't guarantee we get to that point. I'm just saying, every step of the way, we are seeing the development of a component that is a requirement for civil war or revolution. If you went back to 2018, shut up and listen, all the naysayers, and told everybody by 2024, we will see the formation of the GSD, Governor Safeguarding Democracy Coalition, to stand against, in opposition to Donald Trump, who will have won a second term in a second non-consecutive term after being accused of 91 criminal charges of attempting to overthrow the government. You'd say, you're insane. That will never happen. I could not, in my wildest of dreams in 2018, predicted what we are seeing today. Guys, I'm telling you, the Democrats will seek to form a shadow cabinet, and they'll be operating in conjunction with the GSD, a faction of state governors forming a coalition to oppose what they say is a fascist takeover of government by Donald Trump. Republicans will win every branch. People will be claiming that Elon Musk was using satellites to steal the election. You're going to be like, shut up. We're here. Now, I don't know what happens next. Of course not. What's frustrating to me and why I speak with such passion is that I cannot believe we are at this point where CNN is running a story about a shadow cabinet.
Well, the Democrats' nightmare is quickly breaking into a kind of a fever dream. Some party members are floating ideas about how to respond to a second Trump presidency, and some ideas more outlandish than others. So let's take the temperature of the room, shall we? First up, the dream that Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor could resign and be replaced by a younger justice.
Oh, geez. Seriously?
I think that's actually a very good plan. I think it's something that
Cringe.
make Kamala public.
Throw out
Very cringe, CNN.
Congressman, why do you think this is the way to possibly challenge this administration?
First of all, this is something we can do. This is something that definitely can happen. And they've been doing it for over 100 years in the UK. Mm-hmm. So this is an idea that his time has come. And if we do the exact same thing against Trump, we're going to get the same results. We have to step up our game. We have to go toe-to-toe with Trump. And it's not just about saying, what we're against. It's about saying what we're for and putting our best messengers out there to go toe-to-toe. They put Elise Stefanik at the UN. We should have someone going one-on-one with her, talking about, what we would do better and why the choices they make are wrong.
So what would this look like? It would be somebody who acts as if it was, State of the Union, a response they would give every time there is a major speech or press conference, or they'd have their own issue or white papers. What would this look like in practice?
First and foremost, it's about accountability. It's about keeping, public pressure on every member of the cabinet.
They have no authority to do that. Step out of the line,
you got someone, who is there, ready to call them out. That's something we don't have. You've got an issue with the EPA. You've got the spokesman taking a counterpoint right away on your show. So
let's pause. What he's saying is that Elise Stefanik will make claims to the UN, and the Democrat shadow ambassador will come out and speak to counter that message. Sounds just like talking. What's the big deal? The big deal is this. When Donald Trump seeks mass deportations, and he will, the Democrats are going to resist this. Donald Trump will then have to invoke the Insurrection Act or something like that. It's going to get messy. First, I think they're going to go for soft deportation, where they pull benefits, call in local law enforcement, and we see a major move against many illegal and criminal aliens, but largely they'll self-deport. Where it gets crazy is if Donald Trump does seek to actually implement mass deportations. I believe he will. Democrats will oppose this. The GSD will say no. In the event you get to a legal dispute that the left is finding untenable and will not accept, you will then have a shadow structure of government. Now, Rudyard Lynch of What If Alt History said he believes that there will be a Patriots capital in Austin and a People's capital in D.C. I said, no, there will be the capital of the U.S. in D.C. and there will be the People's capital in New York City. After watching all of this, maybe it'll be Chicago, but it seems like we've moved in that direction. Rudyard said Trump will win, And we will have 1,000 political deaths by April because of insurgency. It's not going to be war. States aren't marching against states. But he's like, I don't know, probably bombings and shootings and things like that. There will be 1,000 dead from some domestic political means by then. I don't know if I agree with him. We're talking 5 months. That seems pretty brutal. But I could be wrong. What I will say is it doesn't sound as far-fetched that we could have a people's capital. Understand this, my friends. It is all grains of sand. I have said this every single time. You will not see Democrats coming out going, I hereby declare. It's not going to happen. What's going to happen is some guy's going to say, we want to have a shadow cabinet. You know, we're going to create a structure of people who are to act as the position that if there's a UN ambassador, we'll have a shadow UN ambassador. What they then create is a faux hierarchical structure. Then what happens is they'll create a faux capital. They'll say, we're going to have our shadow cabinet meetings in New York City. Or maybe Chicago. It's a central location. Who knows? Colorado. They'll say the shadow cabinet will hold meetings here to discuss our plans to resist Donald Trump's fascist policies. Then, if Donald Trump seeks to invoke the Insurrection Act, this is what they are now sitting on, the state level GSD resisting Trump, and a faux structure becoming the structure. This is how it begins. Maybe it doesn't, but if this did not happen, I would say things were de-escalating. If I said Democrats are being awfully quiet. Understand. Let's talk about this, a wildfire. California, there was a wildfire a few years ago. How did it start? A guy had a chain attached to the back of his truck, and it was bouncing around, and it sparked. That's it. It happens. Now, if I were to go to you and say 10,000 acres, 100,000 acres will be burned to the ground, homes destroyed and wiped out in a wildfire, I'm predicting this, you'd be like, who's going to start a fire that big? How does a fire that big get started? You think someone's going to go and just flamethrower all these houses? That's crazy. 100,000 acres? That's nuts. How do you burn so much down? It sounds crazy, except we all realize a guy can flick a cigarette into the brush and burn down 100,000 acres. It takes but a single spark. The fire starts spreading. It can't be stopped. What they are doing with this shadow cabinet and with the GSD they are laying the tinder on the ground that needs only a single spark. I can give you a bunch of different potential scenarios. Donald Trump says, we will no longer be tolerating sanctuary states that allow criminal aliens like the one who killed Laken Riley to ignore the law. We will be sending in our good men and women in uniform to deport these criminals who should not be in this country. California says, no, we're a sanctuary state. Trump says, I don't care. We're not playing those games anymore. He calls on local law enforcement. Some sheriff's departments say, okay, let's roll. California, Gavin Newsom instructs them saying, no, you are in violation and state troopers will come and stop this from happening. We do not comply. We're a sanctuary state. Likely they won't. Trump then says, I am entitled to invoke the Insurrection Act, which states that if laws are being broken and the state will not comply, I can take control of the National Guard and have them enforce the law. It happens during riots. California then says, Trump is a fascist. He's taking over. What do we do? The shadow cabinet then stands up. They say, people of this country, we warned you that Donald Trump was Hitler and he is trying to seize control of the military. It's one step at a time. The state then says, Gavin Newsom then says to the National Guard, do not follow orders of the federal government. They cannot take from us the National Guard. What happens? What happens? Honest question. Maybe Donald Trump just says, we tried to invoke the Insurrection Act, but they wouldn't listen, so we're doing nothing and we're going to let the illegal aliens just keep living here. Maybe that happens. Maybe Newsom says, don't obstruct, just let them deport. I doubt it. The amount of people that have to be deported is going to require trains, buses, planes, etc. Democrats are going to take photos and say, it's happening again. We said never again. I don't see how Democrats roll over and just let it happen. I asked Sam Cedar this a couple weeks ago. He's like, you really think a civil war? I don't think it's going to happen. And I said, if Donald Trump invokes the Insurrection Act to begin mass deportations and is loading people onto buses and train carts, do you think Democrats just roll over? And he went, well, I mean, he starts taking control of the military, I just don't think that's likely. You don't. So Trump said he wants mass deportations. You don't think he'll do it? It's remarkable what they claim Trump will do. But then when you ask him if it's going to go down and what happens next, they say, nope, 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 nope. I don't know what happens next. But I can tell you that every step of the way, we have inched towards civil war. That's it. I don't know. I'd like to think it won't happen. But if Donald Trump won this clean, he did. If he won it clean and Democrats were rebuked, I'd say, okay. Instead, the response from Democrats is to create structures of authority to reject the popular mandate. DOJ staffers saying they will keep their heads down and reject and resist Trump and block him at every step of the way. He knows this. Trump's going to start firing people en masse. They're going to say Trump he's staging a revolution. It's a takeover. He's destroying our country. I don't see how Democrats just let that happen. Now they're forming a they're calling for a shadow cabinet, and they're forming the GSD, they call it. They are building the mechanisms by which they will reject democratic rule of law in this country. You tell me what happens next. No idea. Stay safe, everybody. Make sure you got safeandreadymeals.com. Make sure you got water. Stick around. More segments to come, and we'll see you all shortly.